Hello and welcome to the Leaderboard, where I talk about games that I've played and rank them against each other, because everything is a contest. As always, all views expressed herein are my own subjective opinion, but they are also true. This is my domain where I am the arbiter of taste, which means that I get final say on the leaderboard when I have guests on, don't worry about it. Today, I'm talking about Momodora Reverie under the Moonlight, also sometimes known as Momodora 4, just because it's shorter and that's what it is. It is the fourth Momodora game. It was developed by Bomb Service and published at different times by Playism and Dongen Entertainment. The first release was on March 4th, 2016 for PC. So Momodora Reverie under the Moonlight, or Momodora 4, is the fourth in a series of... It's interesting, actually, because it's a big departure for the Momodora series. I was going to say Metroidvanias, but I'm not sure if I would describe the earlier Momodora games as Metroidvanias. I don't think that I would say that Momodora 3 is, in particular. I have very limited experience with Momodora 1 and 2, but Momodora 3, which I've also played and finished, and which will be ranked here at some point, I would say is definitely not a Metroidvania, and Momodora 4 definitely is. Momodora 4 is also a lot less minimalist than the earlier games in the series. Like, going back to Momodora 3 was interesting because there's a lot less going on mechanically, there's a lot less dialogue, there's a lot less in terms of exploration and items, and there's so much more going on in Momodora 4. It's taken a lot of influence from a lot of other Metroidvanias and also from the Souls series in certain ways. It's taken a lot of inspiration from other Metroidvanias, and I think that it's a better product for it. I think that Momodora 4, while its predecessors are good games, I would say, Momodora 4 is the first one that's really left an impact on me. That's really like, wow, this is something great. In it, you play as a priestess named Kaho, who is very adorable. She's a redhead with a white cloak that actually reminds me quite a bit of the white mage cloaks from Final Fantasy, and her weapon, which is quite striking, is a large red maple leaf that she swings like a sword. I think there's some kind of enchantment on it. I don't remember quite all of the lore. The leaf in itself has kind of like an interesting and pretty satisfying rhythm to it. It sort of combos into itself with like a 1-2-3 finisher kind of rhythm, or maybe it was 1-2 finisher. Regardless, you hit a certain number of hits and then do like a finishing hit, but I don't think that the finishing hit does more damage, so from what I recall, it's actually more worthwhile to let the first couple hits play out and then pause slightly so that you can restart your combo and have less end lag, and thus deal out a more consistent stream of damage, which is, you know, all well and good. I'm all for having little bits of tech like that in games where you can just kind of recognize, oh, if I change things up just slightly here, then I can get a little bit more bang for my buck in terms of damage output and whatnot, which, you know, very, very good and fun in my opinion. It has like a little bit of a Souls-like influence in certain places. Rather than save points, you get bells that you have to like activate the first time, and then you can save at them just by like visiting them again and like giving them a smack to ring the bell. I believe that you can also teleport between these bells after a certain point. They become fast travel eventually, because the world is somewhat large, not as big as some Metroidvanias out there. It's not like Hollow Knight big, which Hollow Knight is fucking huge. Hollow Knight is crazy fucking huge. But, you know, it's big enough that you kind of want to have a little bit of a way to get around more quickly. You start off in this forest area, which is, you know, fairly friendly. Like, you got some like little imp enemies, and you got like some big tomato-looking guys with clubs and whatnot. But, you know, there's not really anything there's not really anything foreboding at this point. Although eventually you do enter Karst Castle, which is where you are heading on your mission. And once you get into there, things kind of take a bit more of a turn towards something fucked up is going on in Karst Castle. It is not a good place. There's these wolves, these like, I think they're like ghost wolves or something like that. There's people are dead all over the place. It's not a good time. I mean, it's great in terms of like in the game, like playing the game. It's a wonderful, fun game that I enjoy quite a lot. But bad things have happened in Karst Castle. It's not a good place to be. And there seems to be some weird shit going on with the queen. there's like a curse emanating from her. You meet a secondary character who sort of informs you of this stuff, and whose goal is to stop the queen, and she ends up failing. There are several NPCs that you can meet throughout the course of the game, all of whom there's an interesting, I think, approach taken to the writing here, where the way that these characters kind of talk, it's as if they expect you to kind of know more about the setting than you really do, which normally could be like a frustrating thing if it just results in the player not being able to understand what's being said. But I think that it strikes a good balance here, where there's definitely a mystique here. There's definitely a sense that like you don't know all of what's going on, but at the same time, I don't think that it ever gets to the point where you feel like utterly lost. It gives it this very particular tone that feels kind of wistful and off in the distance. Like you can't quite grasp everything, but you get enough to go on that you feel satisfied with the information that you have. At least I did. Obviously, I can't speak for everyone here. Of course, this being a Metroidvania, it has a lot of the normal Metroidvania things. You wander around the world in a non-linear fashion. You find items that can open up new pathways for you and unlock new abilities. You find bosses who you, of course, have to fight, who will often also give you new abilities. This one has like some little twists to it, I think, where there are certain cases where rather than an item giving you an ability or directly opening a path, it's like you have to take this item to a particular spot in order to activate a story event, which is not usually how I see it done in Metroidvanias. And the way that it's treated is more of it's less of a this is the progress type of thing, and more of a this is an event that you can trigger if you want, that may or may not be tied to progress. As the story goes on, you do eventually hit a point where, depending on what actions you take, you'll get a different ending in the story. To my knowledge, there are two endings, although I could be wrong about that. I would need to do more research than I feel like doing for this video to really like say that for sure, but I know that the first ending that I got was one in which Kaho is unsuccessful at defeating the queen, and well, she's successful at defeating the queen, but she's unsuccessful at stopping the curse. But then I went and I kind of wandered around and found some little unique things, some little items that hadn't been slotted into place yet, and kind of went looking for what to do with those, right? And eventually found my way to the proper ending, where, spoiler alert, I suppose, after defeating the queen, Kaho sacrifices herself by drawing the curse into her body in order to seal it and save the land. Now, again, this is a bit of a spoiler, but it's not. I don't think that this ending is like. I don't think that the game hinges upon this. This is purely like, it is a satisfying ending, but I don't think that it's one that is. I don't think that knowing it would dissuade most people from playing the game after having started it. It's just a fun game in itself. The plot is certainly serviceable. It's, I enjoy it at times. I like some of the characters. I like some of the writing. But I wouldn't say that it is the main thing that I would recommend this game for, and I wouldn't say that spoiling it is like ruins the game in any way. And aside from the melee attacks with the leaf, she also has a bow, which can be used at range. You can dodge roll out of the way of stuff, which feels very snappy and responsive and just good. It has the right number of iframes. The bow can be charged up for... Was it a more powerful shot or a fanning out shot? I think it's both, actually. I think it's both more powerful, and it like shoots multiple projectiles that fan out a little bit, which is, obviously very, very well and good, very nice. I like that. The bow is also used in puzzle solving at certain points. You gotta use it to hit distant switches and whatnot. Pretty basics. Most of this game's gameplay setup is standard stuff that you've probably seen before, but done particularly well. Done in a way that is very enjoyable to play. And it looks gorgeous too. The pixel art is absolutely fantastic. It is just a beautiful game to look at that I would highly recommend checking out. But yeah, in fact, the plot, I would say, is not even like the best aspect of the game's writing. I would say that the real sort of selling point of this game's writing, for me at least, is more the tone it strikes rather than the actual events that take place. And don't get me wrong, those events do contribute to the tone. This sort of like melancholy, sort of sad beauty to the world. But I wouldn't say that it's, I wouldn't say that it is essential. I wouldn't say that the plot is the main thing that you're here for. It's more of just like how everything looks, how everyone talks, how everything feels has a very nice, just general vibe to it that I really jive with. So yeah, overall, I would say it's a very, very good game that I would very highly recommend. On my category system here, I would say that I'd probably give Momodora Reverie Under the Moonlight probably 4 stars. Maybe, do I want to give it 5 stars? I might want to give it 5 stars, honestly. It's really like it is a very good game. It is an exceptionally well done game. I mean, like I said, it doesn't really do anything that's like super unique or that you've never seen before. A lot of what is good about it is stuff that has been good in other games. But I would say that this game actually does it just so well on all fronts that even despite the fact that it is a very standard Metroidvania game in a lot of ways, in terms of like approach, I'm still gonna give this one a 5 stars just because it just does it so perfectly. Like this game just does not fuck anything up. It's really good. Which makes the ranking pretty quick because there's only one other game in the 5-star category at the moment, which is Chrono Trigger. Although, I'm not sure whether I want to put Momodora above or below Chrono Trigger. This is a little difficult, actually, because these are both really good games that occupy, like, similar zones in my mind. But I think I'm gonna have to give the edge to Momodora by just a little bit, just because its aesthetic really speaks to me more so than Chrono Trigger's. And don't get me wrong, I love Chrono Trigger's aesthetic. Akira Toriyama, the guy has some weaknesses in places. Character design is not one of those weaknesses. The character designs in Chrono Trigger are great. It has a wonderful aesthetic. I love, like, a lot of it is very, like, height of 16-bit pixel art type of stuff. Not quite as good as Final Fantasy VI, but up there. But Momodora, I think, gets a little over just on the strength of its, environment designs and, like, the sort of general vibe that is conveyed with how things are drawn. I think gives it that edge. Which means Momodora Reverie Under the Moonlight, or Momodora 4, is currently number 1 on the leaderboard, right at the top, for now. It definitely will not be by the end of this podcast, should it ever end, but for right now, it's number 1, baby, right at the top. And for my second game this episode, I will be looking at Assault Android Cactus, developed and published by Witchbeam, originally for PC, Mac, and Linux on 23rd of September 2015. So Assault Android Cactus is a little 3D twin-stick shooter. That's twin-stick in the top-down, the direction you press the stick is the direction you shoot sense, not in, like, I've heard people use twin-stick to refer to, like, first-person shooters that use both analog sticks, which I don't think that's I don't think that that's the correct use of that term. I'm pretty sure that the term they're looking for is dual analog. Nomenclature is kind of funky in video games. It's kind of loosey goosey. It kind of does what it does when it does. Don't worry about it too much. But this is a twin stick shooter. It's an interesting one. As I mentioned, it's a top down perspective. You've got a handful of different little androids who are all just robot-y anime girls of various descriptions with various hair colors. I believe each one has a different... Each one has a slightly different weapon, which is pretty common in a shoot-'em-up, and the sort of gimmick of this game is that in addition to needing to move around and shoot and whatnot, you also have to collect batteries as the levels go on because yours will run out. So you need to kill enemies, collect batteries in order to not instantly lose by running out of your battery. And it's a solid game. It's totally fine. It works properly. I didn't find huge issues with it as I was playing through. I wouldn't say it's anything particularly special either. Uh, the story is fine. It's written in a sort of like lighthearted kind of way, you know, kind of an homage to like to some of the more like lighthearted and less weighty anime out there where you just kind of, oh, you know, there's a bad guy to beat, gotta go beat the bad guy to save the world or whatever, and you know, everybody's kind of, you know, cheerful and upbeat. All the androids are anyway. Even the ship that you crash at the beginning of the game and that you're trying to take back control of is called the Genki Star, which for those who are unfamiliar, Genki is a Japanese term which means okay, like okay in the sense of like you are doing okay. Like Genki doesn't refer to like to like the affirmative form of okay, but like the concept of being okay. And more specifically in anime culture, Genki is often used to refer to a character archetype who is just kind of lets everything just kind of, you know, flow off her back and doesn't worry about it too much, and is just generally cheerful and fine with stuff. And I'm pretty sure that this was a very intentional naming choice, because it pretty accurately reflects like the kind of tone of this game, where even though bad things could theoretically happen if you lose and whatnot, it's not treated with a huge amount of weight. It's just kind of like, gotta beat the bad guy, gotta save the day, you know. And it's charming enough for what it is. It's certainly not a bad game. Although I would say that, as mentioned earlier, it's not really anything special either. It's not something that I would really go out of my way to recommend to people unless they just happen to be big fans of twin-stick shooters, which, you know, if you're a big fan of twin-stick shooters, this is a fine one of those. I would definitely not advise you not to play it unless there's something in particular about its aesthetic that turns you off, which would be fair. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of this like 3D chibi anime style. I think it looks a little bit off-putting in places. But you know, it's fine. It looks okay. The biggest problem that I ran into in the game was with the final boss, which is just the final boss is just a little bit too tight in terms of how it works your battery. I think that it's been a while since I played this, but I think that when you fight the final boss, like, it increases the rate at which you consume battery, so you need to like really constantly be picking up more batteries. And that's just not that fun in my opinion, because like if you kind of it kind of gives you like a steady drip feed of batteries, and if you miss one, then you're kind of fucked. And like I'm not super big on that. At no point in this game do I recall ever having like much difficulty with avoiding damage and like getting killed a bunch due to running out of health. When I did die in this game, it was almost exclusively due to the battery mechanic, which I don't think is super well thought out. And in that final boss, like, it really rears its head and becomes a problem, I think, in that I'm fighting the boss and, you know, I'm doing most things right, but I could miss, you know, one of those batteries and I'm just gonna lose. I'm just fucked, which is just not very fun design in my opinion. I'm not fond of it. I don't like it. I think that there are much more interesting and fun ways to challenge the player, especially in a twin-stick shooter, than by giving them a sort of time limit that needs to be constantly re-upped, or they just die immediately. I just don't think that that's very fun. But you know, it's fine. It doesn't destroy the game or anything. It doesn't make me say that this is a bad game that you should not play. It's just not as interesting as like a more traditional type of shmup challenge, I think. And you know, I understand what they were going for to some degree. Like I get the need to like kind of set yourself apart and make something that is unique in some way, but I think that it would have been better to go instead for polishing up a more standard twin stick shooter type of game rather than this sort of half-baked gimmick that they've essentially tacked onto it, which I just don't think is particularly well executed. And that's about all I have to say about Assault Android Cactus, really. There's not all that much to it. It's a twin stick shooter, and that's about it. You have like some daily challenges and whatnot, which are cool if you're really into the game and just want to keep playing it and keep doing, you know, competing with the player base. I don't even know how much of a player base it has, so maybe the daily challenges aren't that worthwhile, even if you are into it, just because it doesn't have the player base. Who knows? Maybe they are. Maybe it does have a player base. I haven't looked. But yeah, there's just not a whole lot here. I don't think it's not a bad game. I wouldn't say it's a great game either. This is definitely very firmly going in the 3-star section, because it's a fun enough game to play. It works. It does what it claims to do. But I wouldn't recommend it unless something about it, like looking at it, really interests you, or unless you're really into the genre. Now, within this 3-star zone, I would say that it's probably above Audiosurf 2. But do I want to put it above Mario and Sonic? That's the question. Mario and Sonic, I think, is better at being a minigame collection than Assault Android Cactus is at being a twin-stick shooter. But I think that a twin-stick shooter is kind of a less niche genre than a minigame collection, at least in terms of, like the core game-playing audience. Obviously, minigame collections have a lot of appeal to people who don't play games very much and who are just looking for, like, a quick way to spend some time, like, with their cousin or whatever. But minigame collections don't usually have the longevity for people who spend a lot of their time playing games and who are really, like, enthusiastic about the medium, So if you are, like, a more, sort of core gaming audience who plays a lot of video games, then I would imagine that Assault Android Cactus would probably hold your attention longer than Mario and Sonic, but I do think that Mario and Sonic does better at what it's trying to do than Assault Android Cactus does. Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games also has, like, a bit more charm to it, I think. I think it does more with its characters, whereas Assault Android Cactus has, like, these characters who aren't much of anything, and there's not really much done with them. So I think overall I'm going to have to give the edge to Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games here, meaning that Assault Android Cactus is the new number 8 on the list out of 9 currently. That's right. Next episode we're going to be ranking number 10 on the list, so that'll be cool. But yeah, it's a fine game. If you're into the genre, check it out. If not, maybe give it a miss, because I don't think that it's going to convince anybody to get into twin stick shooters. Maybe start with something a little more respected, a little more refined. But if you look at Assault Android Cactus and it seems to strike your fancy, I would not warn you away from it. It is a perfectly fine game to play. And with that, I'm going to be signing off. You can find me on Twitter at FlattenedE. You can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/NilCatAndAquita. I stream single player or like co-op, campaign-oriented, story-based games on Sundays. Currently I'm taking a break from Resident Evil because the guy who I'm going to be streaming Resident Evil 6 with is not available yet. So I'm going to be playing Bullet Witch. Actually, you know what? This is true as of when I just recorded this, but it'll probably be several weeks before this actually goes up. So by the time this goes up, I'll probably be playing Resident Evil 6. But regardless, check that out on Sundays to see me play through a game. On Wednesdays, I have fight streams, which are good fun. I usually do them with my friend Frog King. They jump in on voice chat and we play something either via Steam or Fightcade, and jump-ins are always welcome. If you turn up to a fight stream that we're doing on Wednesday and you have access to the game and it is something that you enjoy, then feel free to, let us know and jump in and get around with one or both of us, because, that's just good fun. It's just good fun to play games with people and with your audience and whatnot, it's a good time. Like I said, a lot of what we play is on Fightcade, which makes it very accessible, because while Fightcade is a little bit of a hassle to set up, it is completely free, and it is a way to play a lot of classic arcade fighting games online with really good rollback netcode. So yeah, if we're playing something on Fightcade, definitely turn up for that. Although you'll want to get Fightcade set up ahead of time, because it is a bit of a hassle. And just check it out. Aside from that, you can of course also watch other stuff on this here channel. Sometimes I do scripted reviews, which go up occasionally. Sometimes I do... By the time this goes up, I might have already started my series of scripted videos about Ayn Rand. And if so, check that out, because not a lot of people really talk about Ayn Rand in depth on the internet, and I think that she's a very interesting author to look at. Not a good one, but an interesting one. I also do a podcast about violent movies with some friends of mine. We watch action movies, horror movies, basically anything that's just fucking violent, that just has folks murdering the shit out of each other. We'll watch it. So, and then we talk about it, and we, you know, we have a grand old time talking about movies. It's good. Check it out. Yeah, aside from that, play Momodora Reverie Under the Moonlight if you haven't. It's a cool game. Give it a look. That's all.